Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television, very last episode for 2024. I'm Coyote Hikiolu here in Lagos. We'll tell you the biggest political stories making the rounds at this hour. But just in the nick of 2024, NNPC announces a coming in stream of Warri Refinery at 60% capacity with diesel, kerosene and naphtha. The big question is, what does this mean? And how does 2025 look when it comes to energy, particularly petrol and the rest? That's a big talking point on the show this afternoon. Well, 20 years after its last maintenance, the Warri Refinery has been rehabilitated and is now processing crude again. And that's according to the management of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. Now, leading a delegation comprising senior management staff of NNPCL, union members and other stakeholders to the plant, the GCO of NNPC Limited, Mr. Melekari, said the plant is ready, trucking out petroleum products, which include AGO, that's diesel, and kerosene. Now, this development comes 1 month after the Port Harcourt refinery came on board. Mr. Kiari also hinted that the Kaduna refinery will soon come on stream. Our correspondent Olu Phillips has more details.
Warri Refining and Petrochemical Company, as it is today known, is one of the 4 Nigerian-owned refineries designed to process a combined capacity of 445,000 barrels a day. Just like the other 3, 2 in Port Harcourt complex and the Kaduna, years of skipped maintenance practice, neglect, and poor funding had eventually brought it down to mere bare bones. For the records, the last time this refinery experienced a turnaround maintenance was in 2004, leading to the decision by the GMD NNPC then to shut down the plant in 2019. But while the doors were shut, the federal government initiated a rehab process of all the Nigerian refineries, this inclusive, but with a different model. On this occasion, and in a rather surprise outing, the doors have been opened as it is official. Warri Refining and Petrochemical Company has started processing crude oil yet again. From the control room to the process plant, the pumps, the columns, the CDU, the crude distillation unit, and more, all are wearing a new look as the machine sounds hit the atmosphere.
This plant has 3 stages. We have started the plant 1, which is, we call it Area 1, the fuels plant. It is able to produce AGO, kerosene, naphtha, and also a blend of petrol oil. And these are high-grade quality products that are required in the country, and we may also have a need to export them. So it's going to give us cash. This company will make money, and the promise of Mr. President that this country must be a net exporter of petroleum products is already happening.
The chief leads with the strong leadership of the GCO, were able to deliver with his can-do attitude. So the charge made by the board and the GCO is that we should keep up momentum and ensure the other units are up and running.
It's been a long drawn battle to rehabilitate this plant, but one officials here say is better late and working than never. Currently, as we speak here live at the depot area of the Warri Refinery, this refinery is processing 75,000 barrels of crude oil a day. It has started today and it goes down in history as the second national refinery that has been turned on in the campaign to bring back and resuscitate and bring back oil and restream all the nation's refinery. So this is it. You can see the flare stock there, and that's clearly an evidence that there's processing going on, there's crude in there, and the trucking out going on out here, and that's what the situation is here at the Warri Refinery. From Warri Refinery, Refining and Petrochemical Company, Olu Phillips reporting for Channels Television.
Well, the president latched onto that, describing the reopening of the 125,000 barrels per day Warri Refining and Petrochemical Company by the NNPC Limited as another remarkable achievement in 2024, which he says has strengthened Nigeria's hope in his administration. According to a statement by spokesperson Bayo Ononuga, with the Warri Refining and Petrochemical Company going into operation after several years of inactivity, President Tinubu has once again expressed his administration's determination to ramp up local refining capacity and make Nigeria a hub for downstream industrial activities in Africa, while praising the Melekari-led management of NNPC Limited for working hard to restore Nigeria's glory and pride as a major oil-producing country. President Tinubu enjoined NNPC Limited to accelerate repair work on Crude Refinery and the 150,000 barrels per day second refinery in Port Harcourt to consolidate Nigeria's position as a global energy leader. So let's get some more insight into this. Of course, that security story we're bringing you on the show. But what is, well, the big story about the refinery, the Warri Refinery coming on stream? What does it mean to Nigeria's energy security or otherwise? We're joined by an oil and gas expert, as an energy expert. Mr. Nick Agule joins us virtually on the program. You're welcome to Lunchtime Politics, Mr. Agule. I know this is something you have followed for decades now. You've played actively in that industry in different areas. But this is a refinery that was inaugurated in 1978, and over 3 decades after, we're celebrating it coming back on stream. From where you see it, what are the feelings streaming through your mind right now?
Thank you very much for bringing me on the show on this momentous day that the NNPC has announced the commencement of operations at the Warri Refinery. In terms of context, like you have said, it's a 125,000 barrels per day refinery. 1978 commissioning refinery has been down for a long time. And we now hear that operations have commenced. It's a good thing for Nigeria and Nigerians because it means we're going to get more products into the market and competition will truly set in. Because as of today, we have the Dangote refinery, 650,000 barrels, is putting products out into the market without competition. The competition to Dangote refinery as of today is imported products which are quite expensive. So now that we have got this 125,000 barrels per day refinery, which the NNPCS says is already operating at the 75,000 barrels per day levels, we are going to see true competition coming. So Dangote refinery will now have to, price right, just as the NNPC will have to price right to just do for the market. And for us consumers, that's what we want. We want producers of goods and services to just do for our patronage. However, I want to serve a caveat. The NNPCL has lost credibility in my mind, and I believe in the minds of many Nigerians out there. So when the NNPCL says something, we first take it with a pinch of salt and wait for them to prove it that it is true. And we are right to think so, because the NNPCL has given us promises and have made commitments to us in the past, which they never fulfilled. So we are taking this news with cautious optimism, but hoping for the best.
It's very interesting when you posit it that way. And really, if 60% of this Warri Refinery is what is in operation, would we say it's 125,000 barrels per day? Shouldn't we downgrade it to 75,000 barrels per day? That's 60% of the 125,000 capacity. And for the Port Harcourt Refinery as well, if it's 70%, that's about 40 plus thousand barrels per day. Perhaps it's something you might want to speak to. But also, when you talk about trust, it's very important in this particular sector, one that has been plagued by a lot of opaqueness. A lot of people still don't understand what this sector is about and what it really means to them. So when you talk about trust, rebuilding trust, what are the things you look to the NNPC Limited to at least do to rebuild that trust, which you say has really been depleted?
Yeah, thank you very much. So you have said two things. The first is that when you commission a new, or rather when you revamp a refinery or even commission a new one, it takes a while for you to achieve 100% capacity. So the Warri Refinery is 125,000 barrels nameplate capacity, but now that they have commissioned, they are going to introduce crude through the processes, and they are going to fine-tune things and all of that. And also whether NNPCA has got enough crude stock, the feedstock itself, whether they've got enough that they can feed 125,000 barrels per day in that refinery. So all those kind of factors put together, we make the refinery not to operate at 100% nameplate capacity on day one. But we're going to see what happens in the next few days and weeks. And we expect that the NNPCL would have run the refinery and would have fixed all that needs to be fixed and then return the refinery to 100% capacity. And now coming to trust, what should the NNPCL do to rebuild our trust? Is delivery. They just need to deliver on their promises. You see, because for us Nigerians, our interest is that we want to buy petroleum products at cheap rates. Because Nigeria has got an unenviable record, and that is a country where minimum wage cannot fill a tank of petrol. Nigeria's minimum wage now can barely buy 60 liters of petrol. If you compare that to the UK or the US, where the minimum wage can attract 2,000 liters of petrol, you will then see that the Nigerian worker is really going through a lot, being thrown under the bus with this high cost. Because for many people today in Nigeria, their wages are going on transportation. Because as if you go to many cities like in Lagos, you discover that those who are working in the island, they are living in the mainland, in far-flung places, sometimes even in Ogun State. If you come to Abuja, those who are working in the city of Abuja, they are living in Kubwa, in Gwagwalada, in Masaka, in Maraba. They have to transport themselves into the cities where they work. And there are no trains, because elsewhere, rail transportation is what brings workers into cities and take them out cheaply and more comfortably. We don't have that. So people are spending a lot on transportation, and a lot of food inflation is coming because of transportation costs and things like that. So our interest is to see the price of petroleum products actually come down, drastically come down. And the NNPCA will need to win our trust if they are able to achieve that. So for us, that is what is in need for us.
A couple of things you have mentioned, so let me try to unwrap them. First, I like how you put the price of petrol in context, because some will tell you, oh, Nigeria has one of the cheapest prices of petrol per liter in the world, right? But when you put it side by side, the minimum wage, and you begin to understand the real value or the real cost of petrol. So what should be the target if we're talking about bringing it down? I know there are different sides to this. People say, well, take it back to where you brought us, back to where it was as at last year or so, but what will be a fair price for petrol? And I know you might want to factor all the other, indices that come to play, but what will be the target for you?
Yeah, so for us, Nigerians and as consumers, with the NNPCL refineries now coming on stream, we're in a good position. It means the refineries belong to us and the crude oil belongs to us. It's not like Dangote refinery where the refinery does not belong to us. So if we have our refinery, which we own, and we are putting crude oil that we own through those refineries, then we can make a deal with ourselves. And this is where I will expect that, if you ask me for specifics, I expect prices to be in the neighborhood of the 500, 400 naira range. Because don't forget that when you push through crude into a refinery, a lot of products come off that, right? So if we are able to break even with the crude oil that we're putting through the refineries, in terms of what the opportunity cost of selling that crude to international market, then we don't need to make a profit with ourselves, right? We should be aiming at just break even, put these products into the market so that the multiplier effect of cheaper petroleum products in Nigeria can now help the economy better. Because let's not forget that a key driver to economic growth is electricity. And because Nigeria is generating 3,000 to 5,000 megawatts of public power, a lot of power generation in Nigeria, including in industrial complexes that are producing goods, are using petroleum products. So if petroleum products become cheaper, the multiplier effect in the economy in terms of bringing down inflation in many sectors in the economy is high. So since crude is ours, refineries are ours, we should not be looking at profit like Dangote is looking at profit. We should just produce this crude and, refine this crude and put it in the market at as the cheapest cost as we can afford. And let's see what happens to our economy.
And for you, that will be 400, 500, not the 900 plus that we have right now. That will be the day, really. I imagine a lot of Nigerians will be excited to see that happen, understanding how tough 2024 has been. But another point you made earlier on is about whether or not we actually have crude to feed those refineries, understanding how that sector operates. Some of the futures have been sold off already, different deals have been signed. So how big a concern is that for you, really?
It's a big concern. It's a big concern that Nigeria is not producing enough crude oil. Let me give a statistic that will interest our viewers. The United States ranks about maybe 5th or 7th in terms of crude oil reserves. If the United States crude oil reserves are less than 50 billion barrels, right? But they are producing like 14, 15 million, sometimes 18 million barrels of crude oil per day. What are they doing? They are extracting crude oil at the fastest rate they can. Because this crude oil, with each passing day, is becoming less and less relevant in the energy mix, right? Nigeria has got 40 billion barrels of crude oil buried in our land. And we are only extracting 1 million barrels, not even up to 2 million barrels. Nigeria needs to follow the example of the United States and put in the efforts to start extracting crude oil at the fastest rate that we can, anything between 4 to 5 million barrels. Right, so that we can make money out of this crude oil before crude oil becomes less relevant in the energy mix the way coal is. As we speak today, Nigeria has got a huge deposit of coal all over the country, with Enugu being the epicenter. And that coal is no longer as relevant as it used to be maybe like 50 years ago. So this is an opportunity that the government must squarely look at now to say, what must we do to unlock value in our oil and gas sector so that we can extract this crude oil, sell it, and make money before crude oil goes out of fashion?
But again, some will say, what's the rush? Some of the nations you mentioned use coal to get to where they are right now, and now they're transitioning. So how about we use what we have, since, hey, everybody's protecting its own interest, right? So how about we use what we have while we still have it for our own gain, rather than using other people's trajectory to decide for ourselves? And I know you understand what I'm saying with energy transition. Should we be in a rush, really, or take our time to use what we have to benefit ourselves?
We should be in a rush, because what we have is crude oil. It's in the ground. So we should be extracting it at a fast rate, because right now we are not. At the rate at which we are going now, it will take us about 50 to 60 years to finish 40 billion barrels that we have, proved reserves, right? And I tell you that in 50 years' time, people are not going to need petroleum products as much as we need it now. Perhaps gas will still be relevant, but certainly not crude oil. So we need to be in a rush. Look, certain factors are militating against Nigeria achieving 4 to 5 million barrels of crude oil production per day. Number one, we have all sorts of criminality in the Niger Delta. And of course, investors are looking at it and saying, if I bring my money and I produce the crude oil, it will be stolen. So government needs to deal with that. The PIB, which was the Petroleum Industry Bill, it kind of put a cloud, a dark cloud over the oil industry in Nigeria for a long time. Now we have it as an act, Petroleum Industry Act. And government needs to now open up the space to invite investment. Because you see one thing, the government of Nigeria is still borrowing to fund the budget. If we improve our crude oil production to even say 3 million barrels, that would be like double of what we are doing now. So we'll now have a lot more money, and we will not need to go and now start borrowing and then spending all of the budget to service the debt. So this is why we should be in a hurry to tap from the natural resources that we have, especially crude oil that is going out of fashion.
All right, 2 quick points before we go. Well, Nigeria is doing 1.8 million barrels, at least as at the last count. That to this government was a big improvement from what we had before. But for you, we should double or even triple that. And some of those points you make are very vital to fixing it. But as we wind down, now the NNPC Limited came out frontally to say, well, this Warri Refinery, right, what we are getting from it is AGO, that's diesel, kerosene, and naphtha. Do you think this is maybe some sort of learning from what we saw with the Port Harcourt refinery, blending or no blending, people saying, well, what you have is naphtha, you're not really refining, cracking all the way. So do you think maybe the NNPC Limited learned from that experience? And again, it goes back to trust. How much transparency have you seen now, particularly with this latest one and Port Harcourt refinery, as to what this plant is doing really?
The NNPCL have sure learned their lessons from Port Harcourt, because in Port Harcourt they came up, they didn't tell us what it was. They simply said the refinery was up and running and trucks were coming in to lift petroleum products, until the controversy about whether they were blending or not came up. So it's good that they are more transparent this time with Warri Refinery, and they have told us what is coming off. And if I can just use a few seconds to talk about what that means. A refinery, the refining process begins with you pushing crude oil into the distillation unit. So once you push crude oil into the distillation unit, the products that the NNPC say they are producing now come off. So AGO comes off, naphtha comes off. So naphtha is not petroleum, it's not PMS, not premium motor spirit. It now goes through further refining processes within the refinery before it becomes premium motor spirit. So obviously, for the NNPCS to say they are now producing naphtha, it means the other subsequent units within the refinery that should have converted the naphtha into PMS are not yet there. And so possibly what is happening in Port Harcourt is what is going to happen in Warri as well. They will take that naphtha that they have now refined and mix it with C5 or some other chemicals and produce a PMS. Or they may decide not to produce PMS at the word go. Because if you remember, when Dangote Refinery started, they didn't start to produce PMS at the beginning, because PMS doesn't come off straight out from the distillation unit. You have to make sure that the other sub-plants within the plant are ready to be able to refine further. So definitely the NNPC have learned their lessons, and we expect them to even be more transparent with us with exactly what is happening in that refinery and what products are coming off. And let us see that the market is now becoming awash with products from the Warri Refinery. Until then, we'll take what they are telling us with a pinch of salt.
Well, there you go. Clearly, the days ahead will be very key to these things unfolding. But we have to thank you so much. You've provided lots of insight into this particular topic. And I mean, it's little wonder you've had experience across BP, Shell, Chevron, even the OML as well. We've been speaking with Mr. Nick Agule, energy expert. Thank you so much for your time on Lunchtime Politics. And I wish you a happy New Year ahead.
Thank you very much. Wishing you a happy New Year. In fact, whilst I was on this, I noticed on TV that is in front of me that New Zealand is already in 2025. So I wish all Nigerians and our viewers a happy 2025 to come.
Certainly. Thank you so much. Well, we're not in 2025 just yet. The Senate President has been looking back and speaking about the state of the country before President Bola Tinubu came to power, saying that Nigeria was on life support just before May 2023. He was speaking during his constituency briefing and empowerment program at the Ikorekpene Township Stadium where that's the Senate president who represents Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District, called on Nigerians, particularly the people of the state, to continue supporting President Tinubu as he works to address Nigeria's economic challenges. Now let's talk security. Ahead of the New Year celebrations, the Commissioner of Police in charge of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Olatunji Disu, is asking residents to desist from illegal acquisition of firearms. Mr. Disu, who made the call in Abuja while parading a hotelier for alleged possession of firearms and attempted murder, warns that the acquisition of firearms without appropriate license remains a criminal offense. The police is equally asking residents to install anti-theft security in their cars to reduce cases of car theft, in addition to aiding quick recovery of stolen vehicles by security operatives. And on that security note, we have come to the end of the show. Here's wishing you a safe 2025 and a prosperous one at that. Thank you for joining us on Lunchtime Politics and for being a part of our year 2024. See you next year. I'm Kayode Kikule. Goodbye.